Colorado's governor office slams DeSantis' marijuana stance, pushing back against a claim that legalization has led to bigger illicit market. If Florida Governor Ron DeSantis needs some advice on how to promote economic and personal freedom, the state of Colorado is, quote, happy to explain the advantages of marijuana legalization, said Governor Jared Polis after Republican presidential candidate doubled down on his opposition to cannabis reform. On Friday, DeSantis peddled a dubious claim that Colorado's illicit market is bigger today than it was before legalizing adult use cannabis in 2012, justifying his own personal opposition to the reform. In response, a spokesperson for Colorado governor's office offered to correct the record for the 2024 GOP presidential hopeful in a statement to Marijuana Moments. I quote, the facts are that Colorado voters approved the legalization of marijuana, which is curbing the illicit market, getting dealers off the streets, reducing youth use, funding school construction, supporting jobs, and Colorado's economy. Colorado is happy to provide the Florida governor advice on how to increase economic and personal freedom like we have in the free state of Colorado. In an interview on the radio station KCPS that aired on Friday, first noted by Florida Politics, DeSantis had challenged the idea that regulating marijuana sales puts illicit operators out of business, stating that an interesting concept, he says, hasn't played out in Colorado, despite evidence to the contrary. There have been states like Colorado who've done things like legalized marijuana, and the argument was, well, you want to have a black market? It will be above board, taxed, and all that stuff, DeSantis said during the interview. Yet Colorado has a bigger black market of marijuana since they legalized it, he added. It's well understood that enacting legalization doesn't fully eliminate the illicit market, and states have had varying degrees of success to that end, but research indicates that Colorado has been among the most effective at transitioning people to the legal marketplace. One report from Leafly and Whitney Economics that was published in 2022 found that nearly all 99% recreational marijuana sales in Colorado now takes place at licensed retailers. I wonder how they got that in. That sounds like a bogus stat to me. The city of Denver also released a report in July indicating that its local regulatory framework has effectively reduced the size of the illicit market, with law enforcement processing a record low amount of illegal cannabis in 2022. There are just a couple of metrics of success that advocates and stakeholders have pointed to as they promoted the state's industry, which launched the first ever legal marijuana sales 10 years ago this week. But in DeSantis' retelling, the illicit market has actually expanded in Colorado, which is one reason he remains opposed to the reform that voters in his own state may have the chance to decide on this November, depending on the outcome of a state Supreme Court challenge from Republican Florida Attorney General Ashley Moody. Despite voting for a handful of reform amendments while serving in Congress, DeSantis has done little to endear himself to the cannabis community since launching his presidential bid. He's maintained steadfast opposition to the policy change and said last summer that he would not move to federally decriminalize cannabis if elected. He also recently suggested that the increase in Florida's medical cannabis patient population is partly due to people using the program as a pretext for recreational use. Floridians, meanwhile, are ready for reform, polling shows. Nearly 7 out of 10 registered Florida voters say they support the marijuana legalization initiative, with majorities of every demographic surveyed in favor of the reform, according to a survey that was released in November. Economic Analysis has said that the Florida legislature and governor's office estimate that the marijuana legalization initiative would generate between $195.6 and $431.3 million in new sales tax revenue if voters enact it. Meanwhile, DeSantis signed a bill that took effect over the summer that added restrictions to the medical marijuana advertising and manufacturing, prohibiting any products or messages that promote recreational cannabis use, while adding more stringent eligibility requirements for workers in the industry. He also approved a bill that expressly prohibits sober living facilities from allowing residents to possess or use medical marijuana, even if the patient is certified by a doctor to legally use cannabis therapeutically in accordance with state law. All other doctor-prescribed pharmaceutical medications may be permitted, however. The governor signed legislation in July banning the sales of any consumable hemp products, including cannabis chewing gum, to people under 21, an expansion of an existing prohibition on young people being able to purchase smokable hemp. In the legislature, meanwhile, a Florida Republican senator also introduced a bill last month to allow licensed medical cannabis businesses to take state tax deductions that are now barred from claiming at the federal level under an Internal Revenue Service code known as 280E. Conversely, another GOP state lawmaker filed legislation on Friday that would impose strict limitations on THC potency. Maybe they could get all their weed from Canada if recreational legalization is approved by the voters. A big mess in Florida as usual. Right-wing moronic Governor Ron DeSanctimonious makes up lies to support his anti-cannabis movement, even though that's what the Florida governor or the Florida voters want. I'm Todd Dankin with High at 9 News. What say you?
Well, first I say, whose headline is this? Because they spelled a lot wrong. And
yeah, there's a space. It's 2 words, a lot. I remember that from 6th grade. A lot, A-L-O-T. It's 2 words. Yes.
Marijuana Moment, by the way, gets credit for this story.
Marijuana Moment.
Yep.
He's sick.
I mean,
all right.
I don't know if Governor Polis really has a lot to stand on and grandstand against Governor DeSantis. Personally, I'm not sure. Like, yes, Colorado has legalized cannabis, but I mean, he was a congressman when this was going on, so he didn't have a lot of say so in regards with the state legislature on how they did this and rolled it out and things like this. So I don't really understand why he is grandstanding in this capacity on Governor DeSantis.
Is he grandstanding, or is he just standing up for his state and saying, "Look, you idiot"?
He's grandstanding.
There isn't a lot of it, really.
Yeah, I think he's grandstanding, and I think Governor DeSantis. I think in reality, there is tons of illicit market cannabis that comes from the legal market, and so therefore, when Colorado promotes themselves as like, hey, everything's so great and green over here, then of course you're going to get lumped into that crowd of being the provider for the illicit market.
Well, doesn't California really provide for the illicit market?
Yes, it does. 100%. It does a lot.
Right.
It does a lot. But at the same time, I mean, Oklahoma does too. I'm sure there's some of that Colorado weed, as bad as it is.
States are starting to join that.
Exactly.
Look, there's always going to be an illicit market on something that is in high demand by the consumer, right? Whatever it is.
High taxation. There will always be an illicit market when there is too high taxation.
Mm-hmm.
Always.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Like if every state just said for the first, 3 to 5 years, we're going to have almost no taxation whatsoever so that everybody can move into the legit lane of doing things, the illicit market would have no reason really to exist.
Mm-hmm. Very, very true. Very, very, very true. I mean, the illicit market is flooding right now. Okay, it is trap-tastic everywhere. You don't have any crime that's getting prosecuted, and the laws have been made to where you basically don't get prosecuted for anything anyway. Right. In a lot of these states, and so there has to be some kind of a balance if people actually want to have like a real industry, or if people just want to trap or die. Then I'm Just let's just pick one way or the other, you guys.
Right. They got to remove 280E so you can run a business like a business, right? I mean, it's so ridiculous that banking is so difficult, that tax deductions are so difficult, just because we deal in a commodity that people want, right? That has a whole black market associated with it.
Yeah,
ridiculous.
And a lot of that is that we have such an illicit market is because of draconian policies that are not only imposed in these different states, but also on the federal government level.
Sure. And it's overtaxed for sure.
Exactly.
For sure. Overregulated, overtaxed. No, I mean, we have to follow stringent rules, right, in order just to keep the license.
Go ahead,
Florida's market has taken such a weird approach to how they rolled everything out, too. I mean, you have these silo Captain King Kongs that own pretty much everything and have unlimited reach in that state. But there's very few opportunities for new entrepreneurs, and it's really sad, actually.
Yeah, it's a good old boy network for sure.
Oh, absolutely. And I've even had folks from Florida reach out to me because of the different licenses that I've been able to acquire here in California, to use me as like their credible licensee, so that they could expand their footprint out there. And it's just really interesting how that works in Florida.
Because Rick Scott was the governor, and now Ron, what is his name?
Ron,
is the governor, and and they're both anti-cannabis, right? The voters want it, the people who live there want it, but these guys think it's against their religion to allow people, personal freedom.
I would challenge anyone that's trying to say that cannabis is against their religion to actually read the Old Testament. Because in there, it says that all seed-bearing plants are this earth and to be used. And so I would encourage any evangelical to make sure that they are studying the good book as much as they want to preach about it.
They only preach the stuff they like.
Fair.
That's what the problem is.
Oh, man. Going back on that previous story, I got a text, Chris. Before we move into Mandy, I got a text. Are you ready for this, Chris?
Stay ready, Jason, so I don't have to get ready.
My aunt read an article, and she said that the article that she read said the mom was working on getting the criminal out of the state. Like, she was working to get him out of the state so that he couldn't get caught.
Interesting.
Oh, yeah. No, that's definitely aiding and abetting.
100% that's aiding and abetting. If that's true, that is without a doubt aiding and abetting. And I wonder what type of actual time that she would receive from that. And I wonder what kind of
tough decision or tough position to put your mother in. I mean, come on. Like, that is like the epitome of.
How do you know she didn't how do you know she didn't put herself in that situation?
I mean, true, but either way, it's just.
She's like, they're not going to take my baby.
I mean, that's probably the situation.